Hi everybody, welcome back. This is season 2 of Going Wild in the Highlands. We had a month off, we're back, we're full of beans, we're still cold.
We are indeed, but the sun's shining, which is a nice change.
It's lovely today, It's really lovely. I hope it's still lovely by the time that this comes out and you hear it. I've seen at my place recently green satin bowerbirds coming down to the possum dray and pinching the twigs from the possum dray and flying off with them in their beaks. And I've seen some reports on Facebook of satin bowerbird males beginning to start creating their bowers. So just to describe for everybody with a satin bowerbird, surely we all know that bird. It's a medium-sized bird and the male has a beautiful, deep blue satiny coverage on all of its
sleek and beautiful
gorgeous
plumage.
Yeah.
Looks almost black until you see the light in it. And
Yeah,
you see it's
that's
blue.
right. And the male will build a bower out of twigs. He plants these twigs one end down into the soil. I don't know how he does it, and creates a gorgeous corridor.
Yeah, it's a sort of woven. He weaves it, doesn't he?
Yeah,
But it's more vertical than horizontal construction.
So he's poking all those little twigs into the ground
with great care.
Yeah, and then he decorates the front of the bower with blue objects. And this is the reason why I wanted to talk about bowerbirds today. So in the past, I used to put out blue milk bottle tops because I loved watching the bowerbird come down and pinch the milk bottle top and fly out to his bower with it. But last year I saw some photos of a bowerbird who had around his neck a blue milk bottle top that had degraded. So the centre of the top had actually broken down and his head he'd put his head through the centre of it.
Well, not good.
Not good, and it wasn't I actually know the person who took the photo, and it was not a good outcome for that bowerbird. And if you're putting out blue objects for them, invariably they're plastic and they're still ending up in our waterways and things. So as much as I understand the temptation, and I've done it myself in the past, I would ask people not to put blue plastic items out for bowerbirds.
Good advice. I used to do it too.
Yeah, it's like they used to just say don't put the ring of the lid out, but like this was definitely an entire lid that had broken down.
Yeah.
But they do like grape hyacinth flowers. So maybe you might like to plant some grape hyacinths if you don't mind their flowers being chopped off and are taken off for use at a satin bowerbird's bower. And other plants that they like are, these may be not the right answers for veggie gardeners, beans, especially the leaves of beans, bok choy leaves, mulberries, grapes, and any other fruit that's going. In the bush, they like soft fruits like lily-pilly, native cherry, native grape, and some harder seeds. So think about putting those things in rather than putting out plastic for our bowerbirds.
Yeah, they really are actually rainforest birds, aren't they, at heart? I think lily-pillies once upon a time were their staple diet in the bush. I think that like having berries, as so many rainforest plants do, was what originally sort of was the big attraction. But today, yeah, our veggie garden's perhaps more attractive. So watch out.
Easier to get to.
Have you heard about this new study with microbats?
Isn't this... Oh, that was my wine glass going down, everybody. Sorry about that. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Study that's been done up on Givaganya.
Yes. So they did this, it's a clever little study where they basically tried to find out how many microbats there were flying around in a certain area. And they chose 2 distinct areas. One was where there had been just a cultural burn, so a cooler, lower kind of a burn with less impact on the canopy. And the other was just a conventional hazard reduction burn. And they wanted to see if it had made a difference to the microbats about where they were basically living. And there was a big difference. But what was also rather impressive was up there on Mount Gibbigunya, there are 13 species of microbats.
Yeah. To our knowledge, this was the first time that any survey of microbats had been done up there.
So that was really impressive.
Yeah.
Microbats are like flying foxes, but they aren't exactly the same. The flying foxes, of course, are a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And the flying foxes eat different food. So the flying foxes are fruit and blossom eaters, and the microbats find their food in the air, and they do it by echolocation.
Amazing.
They're carnivores mostly. They take, flying beetles and moths and that sort of thing. So it's a big difference, but same basic body construction, and that body construction is obviously extremely successful because it hasn't changed in 50 million years.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what evolution has done with them is their hands have now turned into wings, and that has been extremely successful. The back legs have all but disappeared. They're still there with some claws or toes on the end of them. And basically the pelvis is much reduced, but they're the basic mammal design that we all have, you and me and everybody in the mammal department. So how they evolved like that, to take out the flying animals at night, because they're nocturnal, has obviously been a very successful evolutionary story. But, I did not expect 13 species at Gibbigunya.
No, I don't think anybody did.
No way did I think so.
And even added to that, 4 of them are vulnerable species.
Yeah. So that shows it has high environmental value, that mountain.
That little patch. Yeah.
I like to call it a mountain, but of course it doesn't quite count as a mountain. But it's high.
I don't know if you walk on it, it seems to be to me.
Feels like a mountain when you're going up it. And so these warm-blooded animals that basically are covered in hair and feed their young through milk are living there, and some obviously like some areas better than others. So the highest species counts were found in the cultural burn areas. And we think that the reason maybe for that is the way they roost. They roost in mines and culverts, safe little places, maybe even in rocks gathered together, but also in just the bark of trees. They're so small that they can just sort of get in tightly.
Underneath.
Yes. But with the big burns, with our conventional sort of burns, we tend to destroy the top of the trees, like the stags. The stags are those branches that just stick out, that look really ugly at the top of the canopy of the tree, but they can be habitat. And so when there's a big hot burn, they often drop. If they don't drop at the time, they will drop later to the floor of the forest or woodland, thereby losing nest sites for the microbats. So it's significant, I think, that the cultural burns basically win out for biodiversity in this particular case. What I also thought very interesting was there weren't that many species to be found in the gullies.
No, it's said in the report that that's not an attractive area for them anyway.
I know, but why? I didn't say why.
It seemed to imply because of the dampness. Yeah.
Yes. They're not flying things in damp areas.
Don't know the answer.
About navigation.
I mean, they are
too.
often around creeks and things. We're hoping to do some interviews of Max from Lodge Environmental, who did this survey, so we'll know some more about that in another week or two. But first of all, I just want to clarify for people, because I know I used to get mixed up between what's Mount Gibraltar, what's Gibbigunya, what's the Gib, and so on. So Gibbigunya is a patch of land that goes from the back of the golf course out on Centennial Road, and it goes right over to the Old Hume Highway at Welby. It's quite steep to access from either side. You can get onto it from either side. It's 100 85 hectares. And to be honest, although I've walked up there quite a bit, I didn't really think it was a particularly special little spot. But since this survey's been done, I've done a bit of research and I've learned that some species that have been recorded up there have included the powerful owl, greater gliders. We'd actually heard that there were greater gliders up there.
We did.
And yellow-bellied gliders are expected to be up there, and apparently koalas have been recorded up there. I don't know how recently.
It doesn't surprise me, given how many koalas we actually have got.
Yeah. So it's an interesting patch because it doesn't join up with any other little patch of bush. It's just there by itself. And so there are risks of the population interbreeding and so on. So it's going to be interesting to see how this area gets managed over time.
Yes, my fantasy is, well, maybe it can become a reality, is a wildlife corridor that links the Jib, Alexandra and Gibegonia.
Yeah. Well, then
now,
it
when
would
you
link
look
up.
at it on the map, you can see that in the middle is Barrel, Mittagong, and not quite Mossvale, but definitely those two big urban areas. But we've got all these animals just there on these islands breeding with one another, and they could be wiped out with one genetic disease just so easily we would lose the lot. So if we don't join them up and make it a big corridor that they can mix genetically, the future might be quite bleak.
That's right. So it's an interesting patch to watch and richer than I had expected. And another aspect of it is that it's got all different vegetation types up there. Because it's quite hilly up and down, there are some deep, deep valleys with really moist vegetation, as Lou said, but there are also some much drier spots at the top. And there are quite a few rocks up there, so they are probably providing habitat for the microbats. And one of the interesting things I read in the survey was that they recommend that regardless of the type of burn, they don't burn any closer than 25 metres to any of the rocky outcrops.
Yes, I was struck by that too. And I hadn't thought so much about how, you get a bunch of rocks, they make a bunch of cracks. Don't they? Yeah,
nice
so
spot.
it will be... And another thing I should just mention about microbats is they do actually hibernate in cold weather.
Yes.
Which is quite unusual. And it's a way of lowering their body temperature and reducing their metabolic rate, and thereby they're not using the fat reserves that they've built up when things are good.
Very clever.
Yeah, so they would need places to hide for that.
Throughout that period. Yeah, that's right. And as Lou says, they eat a lot of insects. They apparently eat something like 40% of their body weight each day in insects. So they're actually providing a significant service, particularly in agricultural areas and things.
That's
They're
so
an
true.
important animal. We need to be looking after them.
Yeah, they take a lot of pests out.
Yeah. So we like microbats. I heard recently a story of somebody who picked up his raincoat from the back veranda and inside there was a microbat. So we've provided him with 2 little microbat nesting boxes for them to move into.
Instead of his raincoat.
Nice
one.
So over the next few weeks or months, we hope to hear a little bit more about this study and the implications of it.
Well, spring's here, and when spring's here, the wattles have arrived. And boy, are they impressive. Every year we look at them, don't we?
Yeah, they're gorgeous at the moment. There's lots of photos of them on social media and so on.
And the one that always impressed me, I remember it last year, was fantastic, and it's really good again this year, is what we call the sunshine wattle. It's actually got 2 species. They're bobbly flowers, but some of them are a lemony yellow and some of them are a bright yellow.
High vis.
In fact, our picture for Going Wild in the Highlands shows that very wattle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very yellow image, and that's what you see at this time of year. And they really are so welcome after a sort of drabness of the winter days. And they're going to be fantastic this year. So, look out for sunshine wattles.
Yeah. And one of the friends of the podcast, Steve, told me, as you just have, there are 2 subspecies in our area, and one is quite that bright high-vis colour and one is pale. Yes. And he said you frequently see them together. And that afternoon I went out on Givergunya and there they were, just growing right alongside each other. Yeah. Beautiful wattle. There are some other wattles out at the moment at the same time. So do a little bit of research. These ones are called
Acacia terminalis. They've got a pinnate leaf.
Yeah.
Like not a whole leaf, but lots and lots of tiny little leaves all springing out from the one
almost
vein.
like feathers.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I should also say about wattle, I feel obliged to say this every time we talk wattle. Don't blame our wattle for your allergies. It's not likely to come from wattle. The allergies that you see around about this time of year normally come from our cypresses and from some of the grasses that are out at the moment. Wattle, although it does have pollen, not very much nectar, but it does have pollen, the wattle pollen is very heavy and drops to the ground, whereas the pollen from the cypresses and the grasses is more likely to be flying around.
Yes.
And that's what's causing your trouble. Don't blame our wattles.
No, I remember I had a neighbour who complained about my wattle and he said it made his asthma worse.
Oh.
But no.
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 No. It's really nice when somebody asks you a question about nature and you actually know the answer. And it happened to me the other day. A friend said to me, how come when you see superb fairy wrens around, there's only one male and he has a harem of many females? So I think anybody who lives in Australia knows the superb fairy wren. They're an iconic bird. They're lovely. The male has beautiful blue coloration and they're always on greeting cards and postcards and all the rest. And the other birds that are with that male are brown, tiny weeny brown birds with a gorgeous little upright tail.
Sometimes with a slight tinge of blue on the tail.
That's right. That's a clue, Lou.
It's a clue. It's a clue.
So what's actually happening here in the situation that my friend observed is that there is one dominant male who has all his colour, and in amongst that group of brown birds are a number of females and also a number of immature males. And as they get older and they have more testosterone, they will colour up more and more. The more testosterone they have, the longer they retain their colour. But if you look at the brown birds, as Lou says, the ones with the blue tinge in their tail are going to become fully coloured males in time.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research on these birds. They're quite a wicked little bird. They look so innocent.
They're
quite promiscuous.
Quite promiscuous.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, no, I can't remember all the research, but there's a lot. I do remember that, to start with the males, I think that the fully coloured up males take huge risks to go to be high and prominent and to sing above everywhere else in order to get the girls.
That's right.
Which, just a hawk come by and you're gone, mate.
Yeah, that's right. They're lit up like a neon light.
They're very macho in that respect.
Yeah.
And then the females have been found to have, when they've looked at the genetics of the eggs, I think it is.
Yes, you're on the right track.
They actually belong to several males.
Yes, I think I read 74% of the eggs in the nest will come from other fathers. And one source that I read said that she can mate with up to 13 males in the course of half an hour.
Wow. That's really going it, isn't it?
I can't remember the source. Don't quote me. I'm not... But I just had to repeat it because it's so great.
It's a good piece of goss, anyhow.
That's
and
right.
it could be true. I must say, there's a lot more to those little cute little wrens.
That's
on those,
right.
on those
Who knows
cards
what's going
than you
on?
might think, yes.
And can you remember the study about them singing to their eggs?
Yes, I do. So that's right. But actually, I've heard this now with more species, that the baby in the egg and the mum kind of talk to each other. Mm-hmm. They already know the sound of each other.
Yes.
Well, the baby certainly knows the sound of its mother. So when it hatches, it's not liable to make a mistake with another mother. Is that right?
Let's just say it's not what I read. What I read was, you're on the right track. The mother, and maybe even the father, don't know, sings to the superb fairy wrens. I'm only going to talk superb fairy wrens.
The fathers are too busy.
They've got to be busy with someone, don't they? They can't be busy on their own.
Yes, go on.
Some adult bird sings to the eggs, and when the eggs hatch, they can then repeat the superb fairy wren's call. The reason that this is important is because these birds are frequently the target of the cuckoos.
Yes.
So the mother, superb fairy, or the whole family feed the nestlings, but they don't want to waste their time and energy feeding a cuckoo. So they will only feed the ones that can repeat the call.
That sounds more like it. Yep.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's so
amazing.
Good. What a fabulous group of birds.
And you just think that's just one bird, and we're finding all this out about one bird. I mean, there's so much we don't know about virtually every species on the planet.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
wonderful.
Cute little bird. One thing I remember when I first started going out in nature that Lou taught me about superb fairy wrens is that they love blackberry plants because they're dense and prickly. And Lou told me that land care people have to be very careful about clearing out a whole lot of blackberry because you're then taking away the habitat from those birds. So land carers are careful when they possibly can to plant replacement plants before they remove all of the weedy plants where the superb fairy wrens and other small birds
are.
I
was in Sydney too. It was the same with lantana. We would pull out only a little bit at a time and wait for regeneration in the soil or plant ourselves to make that really sort of dense cover that's required by a small bird like the blue wrens because without that cover, they're a goner.
That's right. They can't hang around waiting for the next suitable plant to grow. They've got to have somewhere to be all the time.
I've noticed another thing. I've noticed where there has been a lot of clearing these days, you can see a lot of piles of cleared dead trees all put ready. I suppose maybe they're going to be burnt or maybe they're just going to rot in the middle of the paddock. But they're very often taken up quickly by the blue wrens. In the middle of a paddock, you know, there's so many cracks
because
and
there's such a shortage of spots to go to. Yeah,
it's interesting.
So we wanted to talk about some of the things that we've been seeing around and things to look for during August. And one of the things to talk about is Philotheca.
Philotheca, yes, which most people who are older than me will call Eriostemon. Because they went and changed the genus name, but many of us know it just as waxflower. It's a beautiful native small bush that does magnificently in most gardens in the Southern Highlands.
It does, and it's got a beautiful little simple flower, hasn't it? It comes out as a pink bud.
Yeah, pink, like star shape. I think there's only 4 petals. Lots of them. Other 5. 5. And it's just such a beautiful plant to have in your garden because it's really early that it starts to flower. And
it flowers for a long time.
It flowers for a long time, and they've done a lot of hybridizing or cultivars, should I say, of this native waxflower. And so they've got ones like Winter Rouge, which is reddish and comes out really early. But there are lots of different sorts and different heights and different leaf shapes. The native one that we have in our bush is actually still in the Eriostemon genus, I think. They haven't
Oh,
moved
right.
it for some reason, but everything else has moved into so-called Philotheca. But just look for waxflower when you're at the nursery. And I really recommend this as a really nice garden, early spring, late winter flower. It's only about 1 to 2 meters, and it grows in light shade, which is always handy because some of us have a lot of shade. And it's in that family, the lemon and lime family, the Rutaceae family. So it's got these leaves that if you rub them, you can smell the citrus. They've got, a really lovely citrus smell to them. So that's how you know, actually, that they're in. You wouldn't expect them to be in the same family as lemons, would you?
No, that's quite true.
Yeah.
So look out for it if you're in the bush. Look out for it if you're at your local nursery. It's a good, reliable plant.
It is.
We also noticed during the rain, the magpies were going crazy. This is because the worms come up to the top of the soil. There's a bit of a myth that the worms rise to the top of the soil in the wet because they're drowning. But that seems to have been dispelled, and there are various different explanations provided for why they come up to the top of the soil. One is that they can move more readily through moist soil, and people have observed that many of the worms that come to the surface are the adult worms, and they think it might be because they actually like to go out wandering looking for potential mates at that time. I do want to mention, because I just thought this was so cute, that some of my information on this subject came from the Earthworm Society of Britain. Doesn't that just sound like a group that you want to join?
Oh, yeah.
So next time there's a big rain, and given that it's the Highlands, there's going to be more, check out your magpies outside. They'll be having a great time. What's happening in August? I say every time, I'm not going to read out everything. By now you know about all the regular things. You know that the calendar of nature activities will be up on our Facebook page. So I'm not mentioning all the regular activities, they're all in there, but a couple of particular things that are happening this month and don't happen every month is that on Wednesday the 21st at the Empire Cinema Bowral, there's a free movie called The Koalas, which will be followed by a Q&A, and I think that the Southern Highlands koala team will be there to answer questions for that. That's under the Earthflix program. I also wanted to wish Friends of Thirlmere Lakes, I don't know if it's happy birthday or happy anniversary, but they've been in existence for 10 years.
Wow.
And they recently had a celebration. Well done, everybody in the Friends of Thirlmere Lakes. Keep it up. Then sneaking in slightly under the radar, an activity that you could argue is kind of not really nature, but here we go with it. Sunday the 25th at 2 o'clock at Robertson CTC, there's going to be a concert featuring a group called Ecopela and some other local musicians, and the funds from that are going to support Kirsten Schweth's native wildlife rescue.
The wonderful wildlife
the
care.
Fantastic woman that she is. She needs
something.
lots of support, and that'll be really excellent. Lots of local musicians out there to support Kirsten. So Sunday the 25th at 2 p.m. in Robertson. And I think that's it for us, Lou. Outro. You can find us on Highland FM at 8 p.m. on Monday nights or anytime on their website under podcasts. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube, where we usually have extra photos to go along with our chat. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Our email address is flossandlou@gmail.com. Thank you to Highland FM for sponsoring us, as they do every month. They're wonderful hosts. This week the team included Adam Stokeld, Warren Barnett, Harrison East, and as always, Louise Docker. Thanks for all your help, Louise. And thank you to our contributing photographers, Jeff, Mustafa, Tony, Alan, the two Louises, Nigel, Jenny, Linda, and this month, Steve. I hope that's everybody. If I haven't mentioned your name, please forgive me and let me know. We'll see you again in September. Bye. Lou, you have to say bye.
Bye.